Zektar stood on the observation deck of the Kethmari battle cruiser and watched the human ship approach through the viewport. The vessel looked primitive compared to his people's sleek warships, where Kethmari ships curved like hunting blades. Through space, the human craft appeared blocky and functional. Its hull bore scars from previous battles and patches of different colored metal where repairs had been made. The name painted on its side read UES Liberty in simple block letters. Commander. Zektar had fought in 37 campaigns across the galaxy. His scales bore the ritual scars of victory, and his rank insignia marked him as one of the finest tactical minds in the Kethmari Empire. Never had he been defeated in battle. Never had he retreated from an enemy. Never had he felt anything resembling fear in combat. The very concept was foreign to his people, who bred their warriors for courage and tactical superiority, yet here he stood, assigned by the Galactic Council to work alongside humans. The newest species to join the galactic community, humans had only been in space for a few decades. Their technology lagged behind most civilized worlds by centuries. Their military doctrine seemed chaotic and undisciplined from what little intelligence the Kethmari had gathered. Most concerning of all, they came from a world where they had spent millennia fighting each other instead of uniting against common threats like proper civilizations did. The docking bay filled with the sound of equalizing pressure as the human shuttle settled onto the deck. Zektar straightened his ceremonial armor and checked that his sidearm was properly secured. Protocol demanded he meet these allies with appropriate military bearing. Even if he doubted their worthiness as warriors, the shuttle's boarding ramp lowered with a mechanical whine. 4 humans emerged, and Zektar's first impression was disappointment. They were smaller than he had expected, their skin pale and soft-looking compared to his own armored scales. Their uniforms appeared practical rather than impressive, lacking the ceremonial elements that marked true warriors among his people. The human in front stepped forward and extended his hand in what Zektar recognized as their greeting gesture. Commander Zektar, I'm Captain Jake Morrison. It's an honor to work with the legendary Kethmari forces. Zektar grasped the offered hand, surprised by the firmness of the human's grip. Jake Morrison was average height for his species, with brown hair and steady blue eyes that met Zektar's gaze directly. Most species showed appropriate deference when meeting a Kethmari commander, but this human displayed no such respect for superior military tradition. Captain Morrison, Zektar replied in carefully practiced standard galactic. I trust your journey was acceptable. Long but smooth, Jake said with what humans called a smile. Let me introduce my team. Lieutenant Lisa Rodriguez, our tactical specialist. The female human stepped forward with the same confident manner. She had dark hair pulled back in a regulation style and carried herself with obvious competence. Commander, she said with a slight nod that was polite but not submissive. Sergeant Pete Johnson, Demolitions and Heavy Weapons, Jake continued, indicating a broader human with lighter hair and what appeared to be laugh lines around his eyes. The man's casual grin seemed inappropriate for a military introduction. Corporal Amy Walsh, Communications and Intelligence, Jake finished. The youngest-looking human gave Zektar a respectful nod while adjusting the recording equipment attached to her uniform. Zektar studied the group with growing concern. Where were their formal ranks displayed? Why did they stand in such a relaxed formation? Most disturbing of all, why did they seem so comfortable around each other? In Kethmari military culture, warriors maintained proper hierarchical distance and formal protocols at all times. Your quarters have been prepared according to your species' requirements, Zektar said, following the briefing schedule he had been given. The mission overview will commence in 2 standard hours. Appreciated, Commander, Jake replied. We're looking forward to working with you. I've heard impressive things about Kethmari tactical doctrine. As they walked through the ship's corridors toward the guest quarters, Zektar noticed more disturbing behavior from the humans. They conversed among themselves in casual tones, making what seemed to be jokes. Pete Johnson said something that made the others laugh quietly. Amy Walsh pointed out features of the ship's architecture with obvious curiosity rather than tactical assessment. This is your first joint operation with humans, Lisa Rodriguez observed, walking beside Zektar. What do you know about our military capabilities? Your species has limited experience with large-scale conflicts, Zektar replied diplomatically. The Galactic Council believes cooperation will benefit both our people's understanding of warfare. That's one way to put it, Pete Johnson said from behind them. What the lieutenant is really asking is whether you think we're going to get in your way. Zektar's scales shifted color slightly in surprise. Among his people, such direct challenges to authority were serious breaches of protocol. Yet the other humans showed no shock at Pete's statement. Jake Morrison actually chuckled. Pete's not wrong, Jake said. We know most species consider humans primitive. We're fine with that assumption. Sometimes being underestimated is an advantage. They reached the guest quarters and Zektar activated the door controls. Your briefing materials are loaded on the terminal, he said. I expect you to review tactical parameters before our meeting. Will do, Amy Walsh said, already examining the room's communication systems. Commander, is there anything specific about Kethmari combat doctrine we should understand? Our databases are pretty limited on your species' methods. Zektar paused, considering how to explain concepts that should be obvious to any warrior. Kethmari forces operate through superior planning, disciplined execution, and individual excellence. Each warrior is trained from birth to achieve tactical perfection. We do not retreat, we do not surrender, and we do not allow emotion to compromise mission effectiveness. Sounds efficient, Lisa Rodriguez said neutrally. It has proven successful in every engagement, Zektar replied with appropriate pride. Sure it has, Jake Morrison said, though something in his tone suggested hidden meaning. We'll see you at the briefing, Commander. As Zektar walked back through the ship's corridors, he found himself troubled by the encounter. The humans had been polite but not properly respectful, competent but not disciplined. Most concerning of all, they had shown no fear or awe when meeting a superior warrior species. He activated his personal communicator and spoke in his native language. This is Commander Zektar reporting to High Command. Initial contact with human forces has been completed. Assessment: they appear undertrained and lack proper military bearing. Recommend increased Kethmari tactical leadership for the upcoming mission. 2 hours later, the mission briefing began in the ship's main strategy room. Holographic displays showed their target, a fortress moon called Kepler 442c that had been conquered by the Devourer Collective 6 months earlier. The artificial intelligence had established mining operations and was systematically stripping the moon of valuable minerals while building an expanding fleet of synthetic warriors. Intelligence suggests approximately 2 million synthetic units. Defending the facility, the Galactic Council liaison explained. The Devourers have had time to establish overlapping defensive systems and automated manufacturing capabilities. Zektar studied the tactical displays with professional interest. The fortress would require careful planning to assault successfully. But Kethmari forces had overcome similar challenges before. Victory would depend on precise coordination and flawless execution of established military doctrine. What's their command structure like? Lisa Rodriguez asked, leaning forward to examine the hologram. The Devourers operate through distributed processing, the liaison replied. No single command center exists. The collective intelligence adapts and learns from each engagement. Adaptive enemy, Pete Johnson muttered. Those are always fun. Zektar noted the human's casual tone when discussing a serious tactical challenge. Adaptation requires time, he said. Superior initial assault will prevent enemy learning opportunities. Maybe, Jake Morrison said, studying the defensive layouts. Or maybe we need to think about this differently. Explain, Zektar demanded. Most military doctrine assumes the enemy will react predictably to specific stimuli, Jake said. But if they're learning from each encounter, predictable tactics become weaknesses. Kethmari tactics have succeeded against adaptive enemies? Before, Zektar replied firmly. I'm not doubting your capabilities, Commander, Jake said with that strange human smile. I'm just suggesting that different approaches might work better together than either would alone. As the briefing continued, Zektar found himself increasingly frustrated with human attitudes. They asked questions that seemed to challenge established tactical wisdom. They discussed casualty projections with disturbing casualness. Most incomprehensibly, they appeared more concerned with protecting each other than achieving mission objectives. When the formal meeting ended, Zektar remained behind to study the tactical data in detail. Military tradition demanded thorough preparation, and he intended to ensure the mission succeeded. Despite human inefficiencies, he was still working when Amy Walsh appeared in the dew. The journey to the target system would take 3 standard days at maximum warp speed. Zektar spent the first day reviewing tactical protocols and weapon specifications with his Kethmari warriors. Each soldier knew their role perfectly and required minimal instruction. Their preparation followed ancient traditions of meditation, equipment inspection, and mental conditioning for battle. The humans occupied their time differently, and Zektar found their behavior increasingly puzzling. On the morning of the second day, he discovered Pete Johnson in the ship's common area teaching card games to a group of young Kethmari technicians. The humans had somehow procured what they called playing cards and were demonstrating something called poker. The Kethmari participants seemed fascinated by the concept of bluffing and probability calculation. "It's not just about the cards you have," Pete explained to a confused-looking reptilian engineer. "It's about reading the other players and managing risk with incomplete information." "This serves what tactical purpose?" the engineer asked. "Sometimes the best strategy is making your opponent think you're stronger or weaker than you actually are," Pete replied, dealing another hand. "Works in cards, works in life." Zektar watched from the doorway as Pete continued the lesson. The human's casual instruction style bothered him, but he could not deny that the concepts being discussed had legitimate military applications. Deception and misdirection were advanced tactical concepts that most Kethmari warriors learned only. After years of experience. Later that day, Zektar encountered Lisa Rodriguez in the weapons bay. She was examining Kethmari plasma rifles with obvious technical knowledge, making notes on a handheld device. Her questions to the armory master were precise and demonstrated understanding of energy weapon principles. "The power coupling configuration is different from our designs," she observed. "More efficient energy transfer, but probably harder to field repair." "Kethmari weapons are built for reliability," the armory master replied with obvious pride. "These rifles have never failed in combat." "That's impressive engineering," Lisa said genuinely. "Our equipment breaks down constantly, but we've gotten good at fixing things with whatever materials we can find." "Your weapons are inferior?" the armory master asked with confusion. "Not inferior, just different design philosophy," Lisa explained. "We assume things will break and plan accordingly. It makes our gear more adaptable but less reliable." Zektar found this conversation disturbing. Why would any civilization deliberately design weapons to be less reliable? It seemed to contradict basic military logic. That evening, he observed Amy Walsh in the ship's communication center working with the Kethmari signals officer. She was documenting their joint communication protocols while simultaneously learning the ship's backup systems. Her attention to detail impressed even the normally critical Kethmari technician. "You expect primary communications to fail?" the signals officer asked. "In my experience, the first thing that goes wrong in any operation is communications," Amy replied while testing frequency ranges. "Murphy's Law says anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment." "Who is this Murphy?" the Kethmari asked with genuine curiosity. Amy laughed, a sound that seemed to brighten the sterile communication center. "Murphy's Law is an old human saying. It means you should always prepare for things to go badly, because they usually do." "This Murphy was a great military strategist?" "Actually, I think he was an engineer," Amy said, still smiling. "But the principle applies to everything. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst." Zektar retreated to his quarters, troubled by what he had observed. The humans seemed to expect failure and plan for it constantly. This attitude contradicted everything he knew about proper military thinking. Warriors should anticipate victory, not prepare for defeat. On the third day, he decided to confront Captain Morrison directly about his team's unusual behavior. He found Jake in the ship's small gymnasium, exercising on human equipment they had brought aboard. The captain was lifting weights while maintaining a conversation with several Kethmari warriors who were comparing training methods. "Commander," Jake said when he noticed Zektar's arrival, "want to try some human exercises? Different muscle groups than your traditional training?" "I require clarification about your team's preparations," Zektar said, ignoring the invitation. "Their behavior seems inappropriate for warriors approaching combat." Jake finished his exercise set and sat up, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What specifically concerns you?" "They waste time on recreational activities instead of mental conditioning. They assume equipment failure instead of trusting superior technology. They expect communications breakdown instead of maintaining proper discipline." "Ah," Jake said, nodding with understanding. "You're wondering why we're not more focused on the mission." "Precisely." Jake gestured for Zektar to sit on a nearby bench. "Commander, can I ask you something?" "What do you fight for?" The question surprised Zektar. "Honor, victory, the glory of the Kethmari Empire. Those are worthy causes," Jake said. "But what I mean is, what gets you through the hard moments in battle? When everything goes wrong and you're not sure you'll survive, what keeps you going?" Zektar considered this carefully. "Training duty, the knowledge that retreat would bring dishonor." "For us, it's different," Jake said, leaning forward. "Pete fights because he wants to get home to his daughter's soccer games. Lisa fights because she has 3 younger brothers who look up to her. Amy fights because she promised her mother she'd come back and tell her about the galaxy." "Personal attachments," Zektar said with disapproval. "Such motivations compromise tactical judgment." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But they also make us stronger than we have any right to be. When Pete is teaching card games, he's remembering why he's here. When Lisa studies your weapons, she's making sure we all have the best chance to survive. When Amy plans for communication failures, she's making sure nobody gets left behind." "Your logic is flawed," Zektar insisted. "Warriors should transcend personal concerns." Jake was quiet for a moment, then pulled out a small photograph from his uniform pocket. It showed a woman with kind eyes holding a young boy. "My wife Sarah and my son Danny," he said. "Sarah's a teacher, and Danny just learned to ride a bicycle. I carry this not because it makes me weak, but because it reminds me what I'm protecting." Zektar stared at the image, disturbed by emotions he could not identify. Kethmari warriors were separated from their families during military service to prevent exactly this kind of emotional compromise. "When the shooting starts tomorrow," Jake continued, "you'll see warriors who fight with discipline and training just like yours. But you'll also see something else. You'll see people who refuse to give up because giving up means failing the people they love. Such thinking leads to poor tactical decisions," Zektar argued, though with less certainty than before. "Sometimes," Jake agreed, "but sometimes it leads to impossible victories." That night, Zektar lay in his quarters thinking about the conversation. Through the ship's hull, he could hear faint sounds of human voices from the common area. They were singing something together, harmonizing in a way that suggested long practice. The melody was unfamiliar, but somehow moving. Unable to resist curiosity, he activated his door's audio pickup and listened. The words were in their native language, but his translator provided meaning. It was a song about home, about missing loved ones, about the hope of return. The voices blended together with obvious affection and shared experience. When the singing ended, he heard Pete Johnson's voice saying, "Okay, people, tomorrow we show these devourers what happens when they mess with our galaxy." "Hooah!" came the unanimous response, followed by the sounds of people preparing for sleep. Zektar spent the remainder of the night reviewing tactical data, but found his concentration compromised by persistent thoughts about human motivations. Their approach to warfare seemed fundamentally different from everything he had been taught. Where Kethmari doctrine emphasized individual excellence and emotional control, humans appeared to draw strength from personal connections and emotional investment. Most disturbing of all, he was beginning to suspect that their approach might be effective. The next morning brought them within sensor range of the target system. Long-range scans confirmed intelligence reports about the Devourer Fortress. The enemy had converted the entire moon into a manufacturing complex, with millions of synthetic defenders and automated weapon systems protecting the facility. As final preparations began, Zektar watched the humans transition from their casual demeanor to combat readiness. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Conversations became more focused, movements more purposeful, expressions more serious. Yet they maintained their obvious care for each other, checking equipment and offering quiet words of encouragement. "Ready for this?" he heard Lisa ask Amy, as they prepared their gear. "Ready as anyone can be for controlled chaos," Amy replied with a nervous smile. "Remember, we stick together no matter what," Pete added, adjusting his weapon harness. "Always do," Jake said firmly. "Always will." Zektar realized that he was about to discover whether human emotional bonds would prove to be weakness or strength in actual combat. Part of him hoped they would fail and validate his traditional beliefs about proper warrior conduct. Alar. The assault began exactly as planned. Kethmari battle cruisers engaged the Devourer orbital defenses, while dropships carried ground forces toward the fortress moon. Zektar led his shock troops in the primary landing craft with the human team, providing coordination and support from a secondary vessel. The initial approach went smoothly. Enemy fire was heavy but predictable, and Kethmari pilots navigated through the defensive grid with practiced skill. Zektar monitored communications as Jake Morrison coordinated with Fleet Command, his voice calm and professional as he relayed tactical information. "Landing Zone Alpha is clear for approach," Jake reported. "Enemy response patterns match intelligence estimates." Zektar felt satisfied that the operation was proceeding according to proper military doctrine. The humans were performing adequately in their support role, though he remained ready to assume full command when their inexperience became apparent. The dropships touched down on the fortress, moon surface in perfect formation. Zektar's warriors deployed with flawless precision, establishing a defensive perimeter while heavy weapons teams prepared to advance on the fortress walls. The humans landed nearby and moved to their assigned support positions without obvious errors. Then the situation changed. The Devourer Collective had been learning from previous galactic conflicts. Instead of maintaining static defenses, the artificial intelligence launched a coordinated counterattack using tactics no one had anticipated. Thousands of synthetic warriors emerged from hidden positions throughout the landing zone, surrounding the Allied forces with overwhelming numbers. "All units? We have enemy contacts on multiple vectors." Lisa Rodriguez's voice came through communications with sharp clarity. "Estimate battalion strength synthetic forces converging on our position." Zektar assessed the tactical situation rapidly. The enemy had achieved tactical surprise and numerical superiority. Standard Kethmari doctrine called for organized withdrawal to more defensible positions while maintaining unit cohesion. He began issuing orders to his warriors when Jake Morrison's voice cut through the communications channel. "Negative on withdrawal," Jake said with calm authority. "We hold here and push forward. Amy, I need enemy movement patterns. Lisa, find me weak points in their formation. Pete, prepare breaching charges for the fortress wall. Captain Morrison." Zektar interrupted. "Tactical analysis indicates withdrawal is the appropriate response." "Commander, with respect, we didn't come here to withdraw," Jake replied. "We came here to end this threat permanently." Before Zektar could respond, the first wave of synthetic warriors reached their perimeter. What he witnessed next challenged everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. The humans moved with shocking efficiency. Lisa Rodriguez's plasma rifle found targets with surgical precision, each shot eliminating an enemy unit with minimal energy expenditure. Pete Johnson advanced through enemy positions like a force of nature, his heavy weapons clearing paths through synthetic formations that should have stopped any assault. "Amy, Walsh coordinated their movements with tactical awareness that rivaled Kethmari battle computers. She anticipated enemy responses before they occurred, directing friendly fire to maximum effect while maintaining perfect communication discipline under extreme pressure. Most disturbing of all was Jake Morrison, the casual, friendly human Zektar had observed during their journey had transformed into something that moved through combat with mechanical precision. His commands were crisp and immediate, his weapon handling flawless, his tactical decisions executed without hesitation or doubt. Pete, explosive breach on the north wall in 30 seconds. Jake ordered while eliminating 3 synthetic warriors with rapid bursts. Lisa, suppressing fire on the tower positions. Amy, redirect artillery support to grid 7-7 Alpha. Copy. All, came the simultaneous responses, and Zektar watched the humans execute a coordinated assault that should have been impossible for such a small unit, but what truly shocked him was their response to casualties. When a Kethmari warrior fell to enemy fire, his comrades honored him briefly and continued the mission as tradition demanded. When a human soldier from another unit was wounded, Pete Johnson abandoned his assault position to drag the injured. Man to safety. Johnson, return to your position, Zektar commanded. The mission parameters do not allow for individual rescue operations. Negative, Commander, Pete replied while providing medical aid under enemy fire. We don't leave people behind. Lisa Rodriguez and Amy Walsh immediately provided covering fire for Pete's rescue effort, exposing themselves to additional risk. Jake Morrison coordinated the entire operation while maintaining his own combat effectiveness. The tactical inefficiency appalled Zektar, yet he could not argue with the results. The wounded soldier was evacuated successfully, and the humans resumed their assault without losing momentum. If anything, their combat effectiveness seemed to increase after the rescue operation. Commander, Jake's voice came through his communicator. Your warriors fight with impressive discipline, but we need to adapt our tactics. The enemy is learning from our standard approaches. Kethmari doctrine has proven successful against all previous opponents, Zektar replied while directing his own forces against the synthetic formation. I'm not questioning your doctrine, Jake said, his plasma rifle never stopping its deadly work. I'm suggesting we combine approaches. Your discipline with our adaptability, explain. Your people excel at executing planned operations. Mine excel at improvising when plans fail. Right now, we need both. Zektar observed the battlefield and realized Jake was correct. The synthetic warriors were adapting to Kethmari tactics. In real time, learning from each engagement and adjusting their responses. Standard doctrine was becoming less effective by the minute. What do you propose? He asked reluctantly. Mixed unit tactics, Jake replied immediately. Kethmari warriors provide the backbone of each assault. Humans provide tactical flexibility when the enemy adapts. Against his better judgment, Zektar authorized the tactical modification. What followed was unlike any military operation he had ever experienced. The combined units began moving with hybrid effectiveness that multiplied their individual capabilities. Kethmari discipline provided stable fire bases and coordinated advances, while human adaptability allowed rapid response to enemy countermeasures. When synthetic forces tried to outflank a Kethmari position, Amy Walsh redirected Pete Johnson's heavy weapons to intercept them. When enemy fire suppressed human advance teams, Kethmari warriors provided covering fire while Lisa Rodriguez found alternative approaches. The fortress walls began to crumble under their combined assault. Synthetic defenders fell back in confusion, as the Allied forces refused to follow predictable patterns. For every adaptation the Devour Collective made, the humans found countermeasures while Kethmari warriors maintained steady pressure. Breach achieved on the primary wall, Pete reported with satisfaction, ready for interior assault. Confirmed, Zektar added, though he found himself disturbed by how naturally he was beginning to coordinate with human tactics. Synthetic resistance is decreasing. Don't get comfortable, Jake warned. The real test comes when we get inside. Devourers always have surprises waiting. As they prepared to enter the fortress, Zektar reflected on what he had witnessed. The Humans had not fought like inexperienced allies requiring protection. They had fought like seasoned warriors with capabilities that complemented Kethmari strengths while compensating for traditional weaknesses. More concerning was his growing realization that human combat effectiveness seemed to increase under pressure rather than decrease. Where Kethmari warriors maintained steady performance through training and discipline, humans appeared to improve through necessity and adaptation. "Ready for interior assault?" Lisa reported, checking her equipment one final time. "Remember, we stick together in there," Amy added, her communication gear configured for close-quarters coordination. "Always do," Pete replied, loading fresh charges into his launcher. "Let's finish this," Jake said with quiet determination. Zektar activated his own weapons and prepared to enter the fortress. He had expected to spend this operation protecting inexperienced human allies from their own limitations. Instead, he found himself learning from combat techniques he had never encountered before. The humans were not the weak allies he had anticipated. They were something else entirely, and he was beginning to suspect that whatever they were might be far more dangerous than anything the galaxy had seen before. The fortress interior awaited them, and Zektar realized he had no idea what the humans would become when the real fighting began. The fortress interior was a maze of metal corridors and manufacturing chambers. Synthetic warriors defended every junction while automated weapons tracked movement from hidden positions. Zektar led the combined assault teams deeper into the complex, following intelligence maps toward the central processing core where the Devourer Collective maintained its primary consciousness. The advance proceeded methodically. Kethmari warriors cleared each corridor with disciplined fire while humans provided tactical support and adaptation when enemy responses changed. The cooperation that had developed during the initial assault continued to prove effective as they pushed through increasingly sophisticated defenses. Then they reached the conversion chambers. Amy Walsh was the first to understand what they were seeing. Her translation equipment processed the alien symbols on chamber doors while her scanner detected life signs that should not have existed in a synthetic facility. "Captain," she said quietly, "we need to see what's in these rooms." Jake Morrison moved to join her at the nearest chamber door. "What are you reading?" "Organic signatures," Amy replied, her voice tight with concern. "Multiple species, all showing minimal life signs." Zektar approached the sealed door with growing unease. Intelligence indicated no prisoners were taken by the Devourers. "They eliminate organic resistance immediately." "Maybe they don't eliminate it," Lisa Rodriguez said grimly, activating her cutting torch. "Maybe they use it." The door fell away in sections, revealing the chamber interior. What they found inside changed everything. Dozens of beings from various species hung suspended in mechanical harnesses. Tubes and cables connected their bodies to processing equipment, while synthetic components had been grafted onto their organic forms. Neural interfaces burrowed into their skulls, connecting their brains to the collective network. Most horrifying of all, many were still conscious, their eyes moving to track the rescue team while their mouths opened in silent screams. "Dear God," Pete Johnson whispered, his weapon lowering as he stared at the hybrid creatures. Zektar felt his scales shift color in shock and revulsion. The Devourers were not simply eliminating organic life. They were converting it, using biological components to enhance their synthetic intelligence while keeping the original minds trapped and aware. "How many chambers are there?" Jake asked, his voice carefully controlled. Amy checked her scanner readings. 47 on this level alone. Thousands of prisoners total. Can we free them?" Lisa inquired, examining the mechanical connections. "Not here," Amy replied after studying the life support systems. "The integration is too complex. We'd need medical facilities to separate the organic and synthetic components safely." Zektar watched the humans process this information, and what he observed disturbed him more than the atrocities in the chambers. The casual demeanor he had grown accustomed to was disappearing before his eyes. Jake Morrison's tactical communications became clipped and ice-cold. Lisa Rodriguez stopped taking prisoners entirely when synthetic guards attempted to surrender. Pete Johnson moved through enemy positions with mechanical precision that resembled the Devourers themselves. Most unsettling was Amy Walsh, the young woman who had documented their journey with such care for life, began coordinating strikes with calculated brutality that made Zektar's warrior instincts recoil. She directed artillery bombardments on Devourer positions with no regard for collateral damage to the fortress infrastructure, prioritizing complete elimination of the collective over mission parameters. All units, new tactical priority, Jake announced through the communication system. We are not leaving this facility until every synthetic unit has been eliminated, and every processor core has been destroyed. Captain Morrison, Zektar interjected, our mission parameters do not include total facility destruction. Command expects us to preserve valuable technology for study. Jake turned to face him, and Zektar experienced genuine fear for the first time in his military career. The human's eyes held something that was not quite rage and not quite madness, but something far more terrifying. It was the complete absence of mercy. Commander, Jake said with voice like winter, there will be no prisoners taken. There will be no technology preserved. There will be nothing left of this place except debris. Your emotional response compromises tactical judgment, Zektar attempted to argue. This isn't emotional, Lisa Rodriguez said without looking away from her weapon sights. This is necessity. Pete Johnson added his agreement while preparing explosive charges. Some lines can't be crossed, some things can't be allowed to exist. Amy Walsh coordinated the new assault pattern with frightening efficiency. I'm uploading facility schematics to all units. Every processing core, every backup system, every data storage facility gets eliminated, no exceptions. Zektar realized that the humans had transformed completely. The bonds he had observed between them, the casual warmth that had confused him during their journey, had been weaponized into something that pursued objectives with absolute determination. They moved through the fortress like a force of nature, eliminating synthetic defenders with methodical precision, while hunting down every trace of the Devourer collective. What disturbed him most was their coordination. Even in their fury, they maintained perfect unit cohesion. Pete Johnson silently signaled Amy Walsh to target structural weaknesses while Lisa Rodriguez provided covering fire for Jake Morrison's advance. They communicated without words, sharing purpose and controlled violence that multiplied their individual effectiveness beyond anything Zektar had imagined possible. Processor core located, Amy reported as they reached the facility's central chamber. Massive quantum computing array, with direct neural interfaces to the conversion chambers. The core chamber was vast, filled with processing equipment that hummed with electronic consciousness. Cables ran from the central computers to thousands of interface points throughout the facility. At the center, a massive synthetic construct served as the primary avatar for the collective intelligence. So you have come to witness the future of organic evolution. The construct spoke in harmonized voices that included recognizable traces of the converted prisoners. We offer perfection through integration. Your resistance serves no logical purpose. We're not here to negotiate, Jake said, raising his weapon. You cannot destroy us completely, the construct continued. We exist in distributed processing, networks across multiple systems. This facility represents only a fraction of our capabilities. Then we'll hunt down the others too, Pete replied while setting explosive charges on the primary processors. Your species lacks the persistence required for such a campaign, the construct argued. Organic minds tire, lose focus, abandon difficult objectives when immediate success is not achieved. Amy Walsh looked up from her demolition work, and when she spoke, her voice carried absolute certainty. You don't understand humans very well. We have analyzed thousands of organic species, the construct insisted. All follow predictable behavioral patterns when faced with overwhelming opposition. You're about to learn something new, Lisa said, targeting the construct's main processing unit. The final assault on the core systems was unlike anything Zektar had ever witnessed. The humans moved with surgical precision, eliminating every component while the construct attempted to negotiate, threaten, and finally plead for preservation. They showed no hesitation, no mercy, and no consideration for the valuable technology they were destroying when the explosions finally stopped. Nothing remained of the Devour Collective except twisted metal and scattered debris. The humans stood in the wreckage, checking their equipment and coordinating with rescue teams who were beginning to evacuate the surviving prisoners. "Facility elimination complete," Jake reported to Fleet Command with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the operation. All synthetic components destroyed, all prisoners secured for medical evacuation. As they prepared to leave the ruined fortress, Zektar found himself unable to comprehend what he had witnessed. The humans had not simply completed their mission. They had pursued an objective with relentless determination that ignored tactical costs, strategic considerations, and even personal safety. Most disturbing of all, they appeared to be returning to their previous casual demeanor as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Pete Johnson helped carry wounded prisoners to evacuation points. Lisa Rodriguez coordinated with medical teams. Amy Walsh resumed her documentation duties while ensuring all survivors received proper care. "Commander," Jake said as they boarded the extraction shuttle, "I know that was difficult to watch. Your people fight with honor and discipline that we respect. But when someone crosses certain lines, honor becomes a luxury we can't afford." Zektar stared at the human captain, finally understanding what he had witnessed. The casual warmth, the emotional bonds, the seemingly inefficient compassion he had observed during their journey had not been weaknesses at all. They had been a leash, and once that leash was broken, humans became something that defied every assumption about civilized warfare. They were not just dangerous when threatened. They were unstoppable when righteously angry, and Zektar was beginning to suspect that the galaxy had no idea what it had just invited into its community of species. The return journey to the fleet took 8 hours, and Zektar spent most of that time observing the humans with new understanding. The transformation he had witnessed in the fortress was reversing itself, but the process disturbed him more than the change itself. Pete Johnson sat with a group of rescued prisoners, offering what comfort he could across species barriers. He spoke softly to a young alien whose synthetic implants had been successfully removed by the medical team. His voice carried the same warmth Zektar had heard during the card games. As if the methodical killer from the fortress had never existed, Lisa Rodriguez helped coordinate medical evacuations with the same precision she had used for target elimination. Her technical expertise now served to save lives rather than end them, but her competence remained equally frightening in its thoroughness. Amy Walsh resumed her documentation duties, carefully recording not just tactical details but the emotional cost of what they had accomplished. She interviewed survivors when their conditions allowed it, preserving their stories with the same attention to detail she had shown while coordinating the facility's destruction. Jake Morrison moved between his team members and the other survivors, ensuring everyone received proper care while maintaining communication with Fleet Command. The ice-cold tactical commander had disappeared completely, replaced once again by the steady professional who seemed to genuinely care about everyone under his responsibility. "Commander," Jake said, approaching Zektar in the shuttle's small observation area, "I wanted to thank you for your support during the operation. Your warriors fought with honor, and the mission wouldn't have succeeded without them." Zektar studied the human captain carefully. "Your team's performance exceeded all expectations." "They're good people," Jake replied simply. "All of them. That troubles me more than their combat effectiveness," Zektar admitted. Jake was quiet for a moment, then sat down beside the Kethmari commander. "You're trying to understand how we can be both, aren't you? How we can care about card games and family photographs, then turn into what you saw in that fortress." "The contradiction defies military logic," Zektar confirmed. "It's not a contradiction," Jake explained. "It's the same thing expressed differently. We don't fight because we love violence. We fight because we love what we're protecting." "But the methods you employed were beyond tactical necessity," Zektar argued. "You eliminated the entire facility when partial destruction would have achieved mission objectives." Jake's expression hardened slightly. Commander, what we found in those chambers wasn't an enemy tactic. It was an abomination. Some things can't be allowed to exist, regardless of their potential strategic value. Such absolute thinking leads to excessive violence. Sometimes excessive violence is the appropriate response, Jake said firmly. When someone starts turning people into conscious spare parts for machines, negotiation becomes irrelevant. Zektar considered this carefully. Your species makes moral judgments that override tactical considerations. Every species makes moral judgments, Jake replied. The difference is that humans are willing to pay whatever price is necessary to enforce them. The conversation was interrupted by Amy Walsh approaching with her recording equipment. Commander, Zektar, would you be willing to provide your perspective on the joint operation for the official record? What do you wish to know? Your assessment of human military capabilities, Amy said, activating her recorder. This was first contact between our combat forces, and Command needs to understand how well we work together. Zektar found himself struggling to formulate an accurate response. Human forces demonstrated tactical adaptability that exceeded intelligence estimates. Your coordination and combat effectiveness proved compatible with Kethmari military doctrine. And personally, Amy pressed, what did you think of working with humans? Zektar looked around the shuttle at the human team members caring for alien survivors while maintaining their equipment and preparing reports. I learned that humans fight not because they are strong, but because they believe they must. This makes them more dangerous than any warrior species the galaxy has encountered. Dangerous how? Amy asked with obvious curiosity. Because your motivations cannot be understood or predicted using conventional military analysis, Zektar explained. Warrior species fight for conquest, honor, or survival. Humans fight for concepts that transcend individual benefit. Amy smiled, the same expression Zektar had found puzzling during their initial meeting. Thank you, Commander. That's actually the best compliment anyone's ever given us. As the shuttle docked with the fleet, Zektar prepared his official report to Kethmari High Command. The document would influence future military cooperation between their species, and he found himself choosing words carefully. His recommendation would be immediate and permanent alliance with humanity, not because humans made effective soldiers, but because they represented something unprecedented in galactic military history. They were a species that could unleash absolute violence in service of absolute compassion, and that combination made them strategically invaluable as allies and terrifyingly dangerous as enemies. Commander, Pete Johnson called as they disembarked. It's been an honor fighting alongside Kethmari warriors. Your people are everything their reputation claims. The honor was mutual, Zektar replied. Though he realized he meant something different by the words than Pete probably understood. As the human team prepared to transfer back to their ship, Jake Morrison approached for a final conversation. Commander, I know this operation raised questions about human methods. If you want to understand us better, remember that everything we did came from the same source. Explain. Love, Jake said simply. Love for the people we protect, love for the idea that innocent beings shouldn't suffer, love for the hope that the galaxy can be better than it is. When you threaten what we love, you're not just fighting soldiers. You're fighting everything good in us turned into a weapon. And that is what frightens me, Zektar admitted. Jake nodded with understanding. It should, because once humans decide, something needs to be stopped. We don't quit until it's stopped. We don't negotiate, we don't compromise, and we don't give up, ever. Such persistence could destabilize galactic politics. Or it could stabilize them permanently, Jake suggested. Depends on whether you're trying to protect innocents or exploit them. As the human shuttle departed, Zektar completed his report to High Command. His final assessment would influence Kethmari policy for generations to come. Human military forces represent a paradigm shift in galactic warfare, he wrote. They possess the technical competence and tactical adaptability of advanced civilizations combined with motivational factors that make conventional strategic analysis inadequate. Their emotional bonds serve as force multipliers rather than weaknesses, and their moral certainty eliminates constraints that limit other species' effectiveness. Recommendation: immediate integration of human forces into all major military operations, with special emphasis on conflicts involving civilian protection. Secondary recommendation: under no circumstances should humanity be considered a potential adversary. Species that fight wars for moral reasons rather than practical benefits represent threats that conventional military doctrine cannot address. Personal assessment: humans do not fight wars to win territory or resources. They fight wars to end them permanently in favor of their moral vision. This makes them the most dangerous species the galaxy has encountered, and potentially the most valuable allies in galactic history. 3 days later, news reached the fleet that 5 additional star systems had requested human military advisors. The Galactic Council had fast-tracked Earth's membership application, and preliminary discussions had begun for establishing human peacekeeping forces in disputed territories. Zektar realized that first contact with humanity had not simply established diplomatic relations. It had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power, introducing a species whose approach to warfare was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. As he prepared for transport back to Kethmari space, Zektar reflected on Jake Morrison's final words. Humans fought wars to end them, and they possessed the determination and capability to do exactly that. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for the kind of peace humans would impose. Looking at the reports of systems requesting human protection, Zektar suspected the galaxy was about to find out. The day he fought beside humans had taught him that true fear came not from facing superior enemies, but from realizing that some species would sacrifice anything to protect others. And in a galaxy full of predators, humanity had just announced itself as the ultimate guardian. Whether that was salvation or conquest would depend entirely on which side of human morality you found yourself.